Before I left my job as a public school librarian after 33 years, I want you to picture something. Picture a woman in her mid-60s standing in front of her bathroom mirror at 5:30 in the morning, looking at her reflection and thinking about the Sunday dinner waiting for her later that day. The same Sunday dinner where my daughter-in-law would be laughing about my pathetic pension with my son nodding along. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how I got there, and more importantly, how they all learned exactly what my small pension was really worth. My name is Margaret Chen, and for 33 years I cataloged books, helped children find stories that would change their lives, and made $28,000 a year. In a town where the median household income was $73,000, I was what my son's wife Bethany liked to call charmingly poor. She'd say it with this little laugh, like poverty was a personality quirk I'd chosen, like being quirky or collecting vintage teacups. My son Daniel would laugh too, but his laugh always came a half second too late, like he was remembering he was supposed to. I need to back up further. I need to tell you about my husband first, because none of this makes sense without understanding what came before. Robert died in 2006, 18 years ago now, though some mornings I still reach for his side of the bed and find it cold. We'd been married for 28 years when the cancer took him, and he'd been a contractor, a good one. He built decks and renovated kitchens and always undercharged because he couldn't stand the thought of someone not being able to afford the home repairs they needed. We were never rich. We were never even comfortable, not really. But we were happy. And Daniel had everything he needed growing up, and that felt like enough. Robert left me the house, paid off, and about $47,000 in a life insurance policy. It sounds like a lot until you realize it's all that stands between you and nothing. I was 51 years old. Daniel was 23, just graduated from college, just started his job in pharmaceutical sales. He came to the funeral with his new girlfriend, Bethany, who wore heels so high she kept sinking into the cemetery grass. "You'll be okay, Mom," Daniel said at the reception, his hand on my shoulder, his eyes already drifting toward the door. "You've got Dad's insurance money. That's like, what, a year's salary for you? Maybe 2? I didn't correct him. I was too tired, too empty. I just nodded and watched him leave with Bethany, watched her navigate my dead husband's wake like it was a networking event, handing out her card to my husband's old contractor friends. She worked in real estate. She was always working. The first year after Robert died, I spent $32,000 of that insurance money. I spent it on Daniel's wedding. I can see some of you getting angry. Already typing in the comments about how I should have said no, should have let them pay for their own wedding. But you have to understand, Daniel was my only child, my only family, after Robert died. And when he called me 6 months after the funeral, his voice bright with excitement, saying he'd proposed to Bethany and they wanted to get married that fall, I heard something in his voice I hadn't heard since his father died. Joy, hope, future. "We want something nice, Mom," he said. "Nothing crazy, but Bethany's got this vision. Her parents would help, but her dad just got laid off from the plant, and her mom's medical bills from the surgery are pretty brutal. We were thinking maybe you could chip in with Dad's insurance money." Chip in, that's what he said. Like I'd be contributing to a pizza, not funding an entire wedding. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I paid for the venue, a restored barn that cost $8,000 just to rent for the day. I paid for the catering, 73 guests at $115 a plate. I paid for the flowers, the photographer, the string quartet, Bethany's dress alterations. When it was over, when I'd watched my son marry this woman in front of God and everyone we knew, I had $15,000 left from Robert's insurance. $15,000 between me and whatever came next. I went back to work on Monday. I shelved books and helped a 4th grader find every book we had about sharks. I ate a peanut butter sandwich I'd brought from home, and I didn't tell anyone that I'd just spent more money than I'd see in a year on a single day. I didn't tell anyone that my son hadn't said thank you, not once. That Bethany had complained about the photographer's angles and said maybe they should have gone with someone more expensive. I didn't tell anyone that I'd started having this thought, this horrible little thought that came to me while I was trying to fall asleep. The thought was this: Robert would have said no. Let me tell you about the next few years, because they matter. They built the foundation for everything that came after. Daniel and Bethany bought a house in 2007. A big house, 4 bedrooms in the new development on the west side of town, where all the pharmaceutical reps and real estate agents were moving. The mortgage was $3,200 a month, and they bought it without seeing it in person because Bethany just had a feeling about the neighborhood. They invited me over for housewarming in November. I brought a casserole and a set of kitchen towels I'd embroidered with their initials. Bethany opened the package, looked at the towels, and said, "Oh, how vintage," in that same tone she used to say, "charmingly poor." She put them in a drawer in the laundry room. I found them there, still folded, still unused 3 years later. The house was beautiful. I won't lie about that. Granite countertops and hardwood floors and a master bathroom bigger than my bedroom. They gave me the tour, and I made all the right noises, all the impressed little gasps and compliments. And then we sat down in their enormous living room on their cream-colored sofa that cost more than my car. And Daniel said, "So, Mom, we wanted to talk to you about something." Bethany smiled. She had very white teeth. She smiled like someone who'd practiced in a mirror. "We were thinking," Daniel continued, "that maybe you could help us out with the mortgage for a few months, just while we get established. Bethany's working on getting her real estate license upgraded to broker level, and that's an investment that's going to pay off huge. But right now the course fees are pretty steep. And I'm still building my client base. It's temporary, just maybe $2,000-3,000 a month for like 6 months." I looked at my son. I looked at his wife. I looked at their beautiful house and their beautiful things, and I thought about my $15,000 sitting in my savings account like a life raft in the ocean. "I can't do that," I said. The silence that followed felt like a physical thing. "You can't," Bethany repeated. Not a question, a statement. "I don't have that kind of money," I said. "I make $28,000 a year. I have $15,000 in savings. That's everything between me and—" I stopped. Between me and what? Homelessness, starvation? It sounded so dramatic, so charmingly poor. "You spent $30,000 on our wedding," Bethany said. Her smile was gone. "That was different," I said. "That was from Robert's insurance. That was—" "So you had money then," Daniel said. "Where'd it go?" I stared at my son. My beautiful boy who I'd raised alone for the last year of high school after his father died, who I'd helped move into his college dorm, who'd called me crying during finals week his sophomore year because he didn't think he could do it, and I'd driven 3 hours to sit with him in the parking lot and tell him he could. "The wedding," I said quietly. "It went to the wedding." $30,000 doesn't cover a wedding and leave you with nothing," Bethany said. "What did you do, Mom? Blow it at the casino?" She laughed. She actually laughed. Daniel didn't laugh this time. He just looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like I was a stranger, like I was lying. I left soon after. I drove home to my small house with my paid-off mortgage, and I sat in Robert's chair and I cried. Then I stopped crying. Then I made a decision. I was 53 years old. I had 12 years until I could take early retirement. My pension when I did would be small. Pathetic, really. $18,000 a year, maybe $20,000 if I waited until 67. I'd been reading articles about retirement, about how much you needed to save, and every calculator I used told me the same thing. You're screwed. So I did something about it. I started extreme couponing. And I mean extreme. I subscribed to every coupon website. I learned about store loyalty programs and double coupon days and stacking manufacturer coupons with store coupons. I started shopping at 4 different grocery stores to maximize deals. My weekly grocery bill went from $120 to $37. I ate a lot of rice and beans. I ate a lot of whatever was on manager's special. I stopped buying anything that wasn't on sale. I cut my own hair. I learned from YouTube videos, standing in my bathroom with craft scissors, snipping away at gray hair that I no longer bothered to dye. It looked fine. It looked like exactly what a librarian making $28,000 a year should look like. I stopped using my heat until December and turned it off again in March. I wore sweaters indoors. I bought them at Goodwill, $2 each, thick wool ones from the 1980s that smelled like mothballs until I washed them. I drove my 2003 Honda Civic until it hit 230,000 miles. Then I drove it some more. When something broke, I looked up how to fix it on YouTube. I changed my own oil. I replaced my own brake pads. I kept that car running on pure spite and forum posts. And every month, I took the money I saved and I put it somewhere Daniel and Bethany would never think to look. Let me tell you what they thought I was doing with my money. Let me tell you about the narrative they built. It started at Christmas, 2008. They invited me over for dinner, and when I arrived with a plate of homemade cookies and a card with $50 in it for them, Bethany looked at the card and said, "Oh, Mom, you shouldn't have. We know money's tight." The way she said tight, like it was something embarrassing, like poverty was a communicable disease. "It's fine," I said. I wanted to. "Still," Daniel said, taking the card, not quite meeting my eyes, "we appreciate it. We know you don't have a lot." They gave me a gift card to Olive Garden, $25. That was the beginning of a pattern. Every holiday, every birthday, I gave them what I could afford to give them. Homemade things, mostly. Baked goods, embroidered dish towels, a quilt that took me 6 months to make. And every time, they'd accept the gifts with this sort of patient kindness, like I was a child who'd drawn them a crayon picture they had to pretend to love. And in return, they'd give me practical things. Grocery store gift cards, a new winter coat from Target. Once, a check for $200 with 4 bills written in the memo line. "We know it's hard," Bethany said when she handed me that check, "living on a teacher's salary." "Librarian," I corrected. "Right," she said. "Same thing." It wasn't the same thing, but I didn't argue. I deposited the check and I added it to my secret savings and I kept my mouth shut. By 2011, 3 years into my extreme savings plan, I'd accumulated $93,000. Not in a bank account. Banks are traceable. Banks have statements that can be accidentally seen. I had it in a safe deposit box at a credit union 2 towns over, a place Daniel had never been, would never think to go. $93,000 in cash and treasury bonds, and a few very careful stock investments I'd made through an online broker using a library computer during my lunch breaks. I was a public school librarian who wore thrift store clothes and cut her own hair. Nobody questioned whether I had money because obviously I didn't. Look at me. Look at my life. Look at my sad little pension waiting for me at the end of my sad little career. That was the year Bethany got pregnant. Daniel called me on a Tuesday evening in March. I remember because it was the first warm day of spring, and I'd been in my garden planting snap peas and lettuce starts, and my knees were muddy. "Mom," he said, and his voice had that bright quality again, that joy. "Mom, we're pregnant," I cried. I actually cried, standing there in my garden with my muddy knees and my dying phone battery. A grandchild, family, someone to pass things down to. "That's wonderful," I said. "Oh, Daniel, that's so wonderful." "We're due in November," he said. "And Mom, I have to tell you, Bethany's already got the nursery planned out. She's going all out. We're thinking about converting the guest room, the one with the good light. The one with the good light, the guest room I'd stayed in once when my furnace had broken and I'd had to wait 3 days for a part to come in. The guest room with the queen bed and the decorative pillows that cost $68 each. I knew because I'd seen the receipt on the dresser. "That sounds perfect," I said. "Yeah," Daniel said, and then his voice shifted. Got careful. "So, actually, we were hoping maybe you could help with some of the nursery stuff. We've got a registry started at Target. Just whatever you can afford. We know things are tight for you." There it was again. Tight, like my finances were a pair of jeans that didn't quite fit anymore. I helped with the nursery. I bought 3 items from their registry: a package of washcloths for $12, a musical mobile for $33, and a set of crib sheets for $19, $64 total. I also spent 8 months hand-sewing a baby quilt. I made it from scraps of Robert's old shirts, the ones I'd kept in a box in the attic because I couldn't bear to throw them away. I cut them into squares and triangles, and I stitched them together into a pattern of stars and moons. I backed it with soft flannel. I spent 140 hours on that quilt. When I gave it to Bethany at the baby shower, she held it up and everyone oohed and awed and said how beautiful it was, how special. Bethany smiled and said, "This is so sweet, Mom. So homespun." Homespun. Like that was something quaint and lesser than store-bought. My grandson was born on November 14th, 2011. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. They named him Jackson, and when I first held him in the hospital, when I looked down at his tiny red face and his perfect little fingers, I felt something shift in my chest. This was why I was saving. This was who the money was really for. Let me skip ahead now. Let me compress the next few years, because this is where things start to build, where all the small humiliations start to stack up into something bigger. Jackson grew up beautiful, smart, curious. He looked like Daniel had at that age, all big eyes and quick smiles. I saw him once a month, maybe twice if I was lucky. Always at their house. They never came to mine. "It's just easier," Bethany would say. "With the baby stuff, we'd have to pack so much." I understood. I nodded. I drove the 40 minutes to their house and I played with my grandson on their floor. And I pretended not to notice that the handmade quilt I'd spent 8 months creating was folded at the bottom of the linen closet, underneath store-bought blankets with designer labels. In 2014, Bethany's real estate business took off. She made broker. She started wearing designer suits and driving a BMW. She posted on Facebook about her sales, about closing deals, about being a boss babe and a mom. She never mentioned that her mother-in-law had paid for her wedding. In 2016, they bought a bigger house, 5 bedrooms this time, in an even newer development. HOA fees of $300 a month, a mortgage that had to be at least $5,000. They threw a housewarming party, and I brought a casserole, and Daniel barely spoke to me because he was too busy showing off his new outdoor kitchen to his pharmaceutical rep friends. "Your mom seems sweet," one of the wives said to Bethany, watching me help clear plates. "Oh, she is," Bethany said. "She's a librarian, makes like nothing, but she's just so content with her simple life." Her simple life. Like simplicity was something I'd chosen, like poverty was a lifestyle brand. I went home that night and I checked my accounts. $237,000. I was 61 years old. 4 more years until I could take early retirement. In 2018, they had another baby, a girl this time. Emma. I bought 3 items from their registry: a onesie set for $18, a diaper bag for $42, and a baby carrier for $67, $127 total. I also hand-knitted a christening gown. It took me 6 months. I used the finest cotton yarn I could find, spent $80 on it, which was more than I'd spent on clothes for myself in a year. I followed a pattern from the 1930s, delicate and complex, with tiny shell stitches and a 3-foot train. It was a museum-quality piece. Bethany took one look at it and said, "Oh, how vintage. We were actually thinking about using the modern gown from Nordstrom, but maybe we can save this for dress-up." The Nordstrom gown cost $340. I know because I saw the receipt on their counter. Emma was christened in the Nordstrom gown. My gown went into the bottom of the closet with Jackson's quilt. By 2019, the narrative about my poverty was fully established. It came up at every family gathering, every holiday, every birthday. Always with this tone of gentle concern, like they were worried about me, but also slightly amused by my inability to get my life together. "Mom's still driving that old Civic," Daniel would say at Thanksgiving, and everyone would laugh. "Mom cuts her own hair," Bethany would mention at Christmas, stage whispering to her sister like I couldn't hear. "Mom shops at Goodwill," Jackson said once. Not mean, just matter of fact, the way kids state facts. He was 6. He didn't know it was supposed to be embarrassing. "That's right," I said. "I do. I found a great wool sweater there last week." Bethany's smile was tight. "Well, it's good to be thrifty." Thrifty. Like I had a choice. Here's what they didn't know. By 2019, I had $417,000 saved. I had it in a diversified portfolio of bonds, index funds, and a few very careful real estate investments I'd made through an online platform. I'd learned everything from library books and free online courses. I'd become quite good at investing, actually. My portfolio had outperformed the S&P 500 3 years running. I was 64 years old. I was planning to retire at 65. And I was planning to do something with that money that Daniel and Bethany couldn't even imagine. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let me tell you about Sunday dinners, because that's where this all came to a head. They started Sunday dinners in 2020, right after the pandemic. Bethany said it was about maintaining family connections and giving the kids stability. What it actually was, I came to understand, was a weekly opportunity for them to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy. Every Sunday at 5 o'clock, I'd drive 40 minutes to their house. I'd bring something homemade, a pie, a casserole, bread. Bethany would accept it graciously and then serve store-bought sides, catered mains, expensive wine. The contrast was the point, and every Sunday, somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, the conversation would turn to money. "Did you see the Hendersons got a new boat?" Daniel would say. "Lake house too," Bethany would add. "Must be nice." Then they'd turn to me. "How's the pension looking, Mom? Still planning on retiring next year?" And I'd say yes, and they'd exchange this look, this pitying, superior look that said they were thinking about how sad it was that I'd worked my whole life and had so little to show for it. In January 2023, I turned 68. I'd been retired for 3 years by then. My pension was $21,000 a year, just enough to cover my property taxes, utilities, and basic expenses. On paper, I was exactly as poor as they thought I was. In reality, my portfolio had grown to $683,000. It was at my birthday dinner that year that everything started to crack. Bethany had made a cake, store-bought, from the expensive bakery downtown, chocolate with raspberry filling. It was beautiful. It probably cost $70. "I would have made one," I said, because I always made my own cakes, "but I thought I'd let you handle it this year." "Oh, Mom," Bethany said, laughing. "Your cakes are fine, but this is a special birthday. 68. That's getting up there." Getting up there. Like I was ancient. Like I was 1 foot in the grave. We ate dinner, catered prime rib that probably cost $400, and then Bethany brought out the cake with candles. Everyone sang. I blew out the candles. And then Daniel handed me an envelope. "We got you something," he said. I opened it. Inside was a check for $5,000. I stared at it, at the AP. Precise handwriting. At the memo line that said, "For retirement fund." "We know things are tight," Daniel said. "We know the pension isn't much, so we wanted to help you build a little cushion, for emergencies." The table was silent. Jackson and Emma were watching me with their wide, earnest eyes. Bethany was smiling. Daniel looked so proud of himself. "I can't accept this," I said quietly. The smile slipped from Bethany's face. "Why not?" "It's too much," I said. "Mom," Daniel said, and his voice had an edge now. "Don't be proud. We know you need it. Your pension is what, $20,000 a year? You're practically below the poverty line." "I'm fine," I said. "You drive a car with 250,000 miles on it," Bethany said. "You buy your clothes at Goodwill. You cut your own hair. You're clearly not fine." "I'm fine," I repeated. "Just take the check, Mom," Daniel said. "Don't make this difficult." That's when I realized what the check really was. It wasn't generosity. It wasn't love. It was condescension. It was proof of their superiority. "Look what we can afford to give you. Look how much better we're doing than you." "No," I said. I put the check on the table. "Thank you, but no." The rest of the dinner was tense. I left early. I drove home and I sat in Robert's chair and I thought about the next few years, about what I was planning, about whether I should tell them. I decided not to, not yet. Let me tell you what they said about me after that dinner. I know because Jackson told me. He was 11 by then, old enough to understand things, old enough to repeat things he shouldn't. It was March, a few months after my birthday. I'd taken Jackson to the movies, just the two of us, something we did once a month. Afterwards, we got ice cream and he said, "Grandma, why don't you have more money?" I looked at him. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Mom says your pension is really small. She says you probably should have saved more when you were working." There it was, the narrative, passed down to the next generation. "I saved plenty," I said carefully. "I'm very comfortable." "But you drive an old car," he said, "and your house is so small, and Mom says—" He stopped. "What does Mom say?" He looked down at his ice cream. She says it's sad that you worked your whole life and don't have anything to show for it. She says that's why it's important for me and Emma to get good jobs, so we don't end up like you. End up like me. Like I was a cautionary tale, like my life was a failure. I smiled at my grandson. I have plenty to show for my life, I said. I have you and your sister and your dad. That's everything. He smiled back. He was a good kid. But the seed had been planted. Grandma's poor. Grandma made bad choices. Don't end up like Grandma. In June of 2023, Bethany's father died. He'd been sick for a while, cancer again, that horrible disease that seemed to follow my family around like a curse. The funeral was on a Wednesday. I drove 3 hours to attend. Bethany was devastated. I'd never seen her like that before, all her polish and performance stripped away. She cried through the entire service. Afterwards, at the reception at her mother's house, she pulled me aside. I don't know what we're going to do, she said. Dad didn't have life insurance. He cashed it out years ago when he lost his job. And the medical bills. She stopped, wiped her eyes. Mom's going to lose the house. I knew what she was asking without her asking it. How much? I said. The bills are $67,000, she said. The mortgage has $32,000 left on it. If we can't pay it, if Mom has to sell, she looked at me. You understand what it's like to lose a spouse. You know how important it is to keep the house, the memories. I did know. God help me, I did know. I can help with the bills, I said. But Bethany, I don't have nearly that much. Anything would help, she said. Please, Mom, I know you have that pension. I know you've probably saved a little. Whatever you can spare. I wrote her a check that night for $15,000. It was more than half my yearly pension income. It would, on paper, devastate my finances. In reality, I took it out of my portfolio. It barely made a dent. $668,000 left. Bethany cried when I gave her the check. She hugged me. She said I was an angel, a saint, the most generous mother-in-law anyone could ask for. Daniel called me the next day. Mom, Bethany told me what you did. That's incredible. I can't believe you had that much saved. I've been careful, I said, but $15,000, that's like, what, almost a whole year of your pension? I'll be fine, I said. There was a pause. Then, Mom, do you have more saved? Like, a lot more? No, I lied. That was most of it. I'll need to be more careful now. Budget better. Another pause. Okay, he said. Well, thank you, really. This means everything to Bethany. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about how quickly $15,000 had bought me their gratitude, how differently they'd treated me for exactly one day. And I thought about what would happen when they found out the truth, because they would find out, eventually. I just had to decide when. Sunday dinners continued through the summer and into fall. The dynamic had shifted slightly after the funeral money. Bethany was warmer to me. Daniel called more often. They seemed to have recalculated my worth. But by October, things had settled back into the old pattern. The small condescensions, the pitying looks, the comments about my pension. It was at Sunday dinner on October 15th, 2023, just a few weeks ago now, that everything finally broke open. We were sitting around their dining room table. Roasted chicken, catered sides, expensive wine. Bethany was talking about a house she'd just sold, a mansion in the hills for $2.3 million. Her commission was $69,000. $69,000, she said, laughing. That's like, 3 years of your pension, Mom? She said it lightly, like it was a joke. But Daniel laughed, and Jackson laughed, and even Emma giggled, though she was only 5 and couldn't possibly understand. 3.5, I said quietly. What? Bethany said. 3.5 years, I repeated. My pension is $21,000 a year, so $69,000 would be 3.5 years, not 3. The table went quiet. Right, Bethany said. Sorry, I'm terrible at math. She wasn't terrible at math. She was a real estate broker. She calculated commissions in her head. She knew exactly what she was saying. It must be hard, she continued, pouring herself more wine. Living on so little. Do you ever regret not saving more when you were working? And there it was, the question I'd been waiting for, the judgment I'd been preparing for. No, I said. I don't regret anything. Really? Daniel said. Because Mom, honestly, you could have had a lot more if you'd been more careful. If you hadn't spent so much on... He stopped. On what? I said. On other people, he finished. You were always giving money away. To the library fund, to charity. You paid for our wedding. You could have been investing all that. I stared at my son, at his beautiful house and his beautiful wife and his beautiful children, at everything I'd helped give him. You're right, I said. I could have invested more. See, Bethany said, that's what I tell the kids. You have to think about your future. You have to put yourself first sometimes. Is that what you tell them? I said. Something in my tone made her pause. Well, yes. I mean, obviously we teach them to be generous too, but what do you tell them about me? I asked. Specifically. Daniel shifted in his chair. Mom, this isn't... No, I want to know, I said. I looked at Jackson. What does your mother tell you about Grandma? Jackson looked at his plate. Nothing bad, but something, I pressed. What something? He looked at Bethany. She nodded slightly. She says you didn't plan very well, he said quietly. That you should have saved more. That your pension is really small because you didn't think ahead. And what else? I said. That we should learn from your mistakes, Emma said. She was 5. She said it like she was reciting a lesson. So we don't end up poor. The silence that followed felt like a living thing. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I looked at Daniel and Bethany and I said very clearly, very calmly, I need to go home. Mom, Daniel started. I need to go home, I repeated. And I think we need to take a break from Sunday dinners for a while. I kissed Jackson and Emma goodbye. I walked out to my old Civic with its 253,000 miles. I drove home. And when I got there, I sat down at my computer and I started planning. The next morning, I called my financial advisor. Yes, I had a financial advisor. I'd had one for 15 years. His name was Michael Chen, no relation though we joked about it, and he worked out of an office in Boston. We'd never met in person. Everything was done by phone and email. Daniel and Bethany had no idea he existed. Margaret, Michael said when he answered, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I want to make some changes, I said. Some big changes. I told him my plan. He listened. When I was done, there was a long pause. Are you sure? He said. This is going to attract attention. I'm sure, I said. Okay, he said. Give me 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were strange. Daniel called me 3 times. I let it go to voicemail twice. The third time I answered. Mom, are you okay? He said. You left so abruptly last Sunday. I'm fine, I said. Bethany feels terrible, he said. She didn't mean anything by what she said. She's just got this dark sense of humor sometimes. I see, I said. And the stuff about teaching the kids that came out wrong. We're not telling them you made mistakes. We're just, using your situation as a teaching moment. My situation. Like it was a case study. A what not to do example. Daniel, I said, do you know how much I saved for retirement? Silence. Do you? I repeated. I mean, probably not a lot, he said, given the pension and everything. Right, I said. That's what you think. Mom, what's going on? Nothing, I said. I'll see you soon. I hung up. 2 weeks later, on November 1st, 2023, Michael called me back. It's done, he said. Everything's in place. Thank you, I said. Margaret, he said. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. I wasn't brave. I was tired. I was done being looked down on. I was done being a cautionary tale. That Sunday, November 5th, 2023, I called Daniel. I'd like to do Sunday dinner again, I said, but at my house this time. I'd like to cook for everyone. There was surprise in his voice. Oh, okay. Sure, Mom, that would be great. What time? 5 o'clock, I said. And Daniel? Tell Bethany to come. Tell the kids. I have something I want to share with the family. Is everything okay? He asked. Everything's perfect, I said. That week I prepared. I cleaned my small house until it gleamed. I polished Robert's old furniture. I took out the good dishes, the china we'd gotten as wedding gifts, 40 years ago and barely used. I planned a menu: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls from scratch, apple pie for dessert. The kind of meal I used to make when Daniel was young, when Robert was alive, when we were a family. I also printed out some documents, several documents actually. I put them in a folder and I placed the folder on the kitchen counter where I'd see it. Sunday arrived. At 4:30, I put the roast in to stay warm. At 4:45, I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Gray hair I'd cut myself, Goodwill sweater, Walmart jeans. I looked exactly like what they thought I was, a poor old woman who'd failed to plan properly. The doorbell rang at 5:03. I opened the door to find all of them: Daniel, Bethany, Jackson, Emma. Bethany was holding a bottle of wine, something expensive probably. Daniel had his phone out, already distracted. "Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. "House looks great, smells amazing." "Thank you," I said. "Come in, sit down. Dinner's almost ready." We settled into the small dining room. My house was so much smaller than theirs. The table sat 6 if everyone squeezed. The kids had to use folding chairs I'd pulled from the closet. Bethany looked around with barely concealed pity. "This is cozy," she said. "Cozy," the word people use when they mean cramped. I served dinner. The pot roast was perfect, falling apart at the touch of a fork. The potatoes were creamy, the rolls were warm. For a few minutes, everyone just ate. "This is really good, Mom," Daniel said. "You don't cook like this often anymore." "I cook like this all the time," I said. "You just haven't been here to see it." Bethany took a sip of wine. Her wine, not mine. She'd opened the bottle she brought without asking if I had any. "So what's this big thing you wanted to share? You sounded mysterious on the phone." I put down my fork. "I wanted to talk to you about my finances." The table went very still. "Mom," Daniel said, "you don't have to—" "I want to," I said. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about money, about my pension, about my retirement, about all the assumptions that have been made." Bethany glanced at Daniel. "Okay," she said carefully. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen and picked up the folder. I came back and placed it on the table. "What's this?" Daniel asked. "Open it," I said. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a portfolio summary from my investment account dated November 1st, 2023. He stared at it. His lips moved as he read the number. Once, twice, 3 times. "What is this?" he whispered. "What?" Bethany said. She grabbed the paper. She read it. Her face went white. This says $712,000. $712,833, I corrected. As of November 1st. It's probably a bit more now. The market's been good this week. The silence was absolute. Even the kids had stopped eating, sensing something big was happening. "I don't understand," Daniel said. "How? Where?" "I saved it," I said simply. "I saved it very carefully over the past 18 years, since your father died, since I paid for your wedding with his insurance money and had $15,000 left and decided I needed to do something dramatic if I was going to survive retirement." "But," Bethany said, and her voice was shaking, "but you drive a 2003 Civic. You cut your own hair. You shop at Goodwill." "Yes," I said, "I do all those things because I chose to. Because every dollar I didn't spend on a new car or salon haircuts or brand name clothes was a dollar I could save, a dollar I could invest, a dollar that would compound and grow and turn into this." I tapped the paper. Daniel was still staring at the portfolio summary like it was written in a foreign language. $700,000, he said. "You have $700,000. And a paid-off house worth about $230,000, I added, and a pension of $21,000 a year, and Social Security of $19,000 a year. So my total net worth is approximately $950,000, and my annual income is $40,000, which is plenty for me to live on very comfortably. I'm not poor, Daniel. I've never been poor. I've been strategic." Bethany's hands were shaking. "But you let us think. You let us believe." "I let you assume," I corrected. "You looked at my old car and my thrift store clothes, and you assumed I was broke. You assumed I'd failed. You assumed I was a cautionary tale. And I let you assume it because I wanted to see what you'd do with that assumption. What we'd do, Daniel said. His voice was rising. Mom, what does that mean? I sat back down. I took a bite of pot roast. I chewed carefully. Then I said, it means I wanted to see if you'd love me when you thought I had nothing. If you'd respect me when you thought I'd made all the wrong choices. If you'd include me in your lives not because I was useful, but because I was your mother. That's not fair, Bethany said. We've always included you. Have you? I said. You've included me in Sunday dinners where you mock my pension. You've included me in holidays where you give me charity checks and gift cards for bills. You've included me in your children's lives as an example of what not to become. We never said that, Daniel protested. Jackson, I said, looking at my grandson, what did your mother tell you about Grandma's pension? He looked at his mother. She shook her head slightly. The truth, please, I said gently. She said it was small because you didn't plan ahead, Jackson said quietly. She said we should learn from your mistakes. I looked back at Daniel and Bethany. Your son doesn't lie. Bethany's face was red now. I was trying to teach them financial responsibility. By using me as a failure, I said. By making them think their grandmother was an object lesson in what happens when you don't save properly. You did let us think you were struggling, Daniel said. There was anger in his voice now. You took our money, the $5,000 check, the $15,000 for Bethany's mom. You took it all and you had $700,000 in the bank? I didn't take your money, I said. You gave me a check for my birthday. I refused it. You insisted. I put it in a drawer. I never cashed it. It's upstairs right now if you want it back. His mouth opened, closed. And the $15,000 for Bethany's mother wasn't your money, I continued. It was mine, from my savings. I gave it freely because I understood what it felt like to lose a spouse, because I had empathy, because family helps family when they can. But you took it as confirmation that I'd drained my resources for you, that I was broke now, that I needed your pity even more. You lied to us, Bethany said. You straight up lied about having money. I never lied, I said, not once. You asked if I had more saved after the $15,000 and I said no. That was true at that exact moment. The $15,000 had just come out. You asked if I could help with your mortgage 7 years ago and I said I couldn't. That was also true. I couldn't compromise my retirement plan for your house payment. You asked about my pension and I told you exactly what it was. I never lied. You just assumed that my pension was all I had. You filled in the rest of the story yourselves. Daniel pushed back from the table. He stood up. He paced to the window. This is insane, he said. This whole thing is insane. You let us treat you like what? I said. Like a poor relation? Like a charity case? Like someone who made bad choices and ended up with nothing? He spun around. We were trying to help you. Were you? I said. Because from where I sat, it felt a lot more like you were trying to feel superior. Every comment about my pension, every joke about my car, every time you gave me a gift card like I was some sort of project. It wasn't help. It was condescension. It was you reminding yourselves that you'd done better than me, that you were smarter, more successful, that you'd escaped the poverty you thought I was trapped in. That's not what we were doing, Bethany said, but her voice was weak. Isn't it? I said. Tell me, Bethany. When you posted on Facebook about being a boss babe, about your big commission, about your success, did you ever mention that I paid for your wedding? That I gave you $30,000 so you could have your dream day? She looked away. Did you ever thank me publicly? I pressed. Did you ever acknowledge that your mother-in-law, the one with the sad little pension, had actually given you more than your own parents could afford to? It was years ago, she mumbled. It was my husband's life insurance, I said. It was everything he left me. And I gave it to you because I loved my son and I wanted him to be happy. And in return, you've spent 15 years making me feel small. Emma started crying. She was 5 years old and she didn't understand what was happening, but she understood that the adults were angry. Jackson put his arm around her. I softened immediately. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I said to Emma. Grandma's not angry at you. Come here. She ran to me and I picked her up. She was getting too big to hold comfortably, but I held her anyway. Jackson came over too, more cautiously. I don't understand, Grandma, he said. If you had money all along, why did you pretend you didn't? I didn't pretend, I said. I just lived the way I wanted to live, the way that made sense for me, and everyone else decided what that meant. But why didn't you tell us? He asked. That was the real question, wasn't it? Why didn't I tell them? I looked at Daniel, at his angry, confused face, at his expensive watch and his designer jeans and his whole life built on assumptions. Because I wanted to know who you'd all be when you thought I had nothing to offer, I said quietly. I wanted to know if you'd love me for me, if you'd respect me for what I'd done with my life, raising a good son, helping people, doing work I loved, or if you'd only value me for what I could give you. That's manipulative, Bethany said. Is it? I said. More manipulative than teaching your children that their grandmother is a failure? More manipulative than taking $15,000 from someone you think is broke and never questioning whether you should? We thought you wanted to help, Daniel said. I did want to help, I said. But you thought I was helping at great cost to myself. You thought I was sacrificing my security for Bethany's mother, and you let me. You took the money and you never once said, Mom, are you sure you can afford this? You never said, Mom, let us help you now. You just took it and added it to your narrative about poor, foolish Margaret who can't manage money. The pot roast was getting cold. The rolls were hardening. Nobody was eating anymore. So what now? Daniel said. What's the point of telling us? What do you want? Congratulations? An apology? I want you to understand something, I said. I put Emma down. I looked at both my grandbabies. I want Jackson and Emma to understand that their grandmother isn't a cautionary tale, that I made very deliberate choices, that I lived below my means not because I had to, but because I was building something. And I want you to, I looked at Daniel and Bethany, to understand that wealth isn't always visible, that assumptions can be wrong, that the person you're pitying might not need your pity at all. Bethany laughed. It was a sharp, bitter sound. So this whole thing was what? A test? You tested us and we failed? I tested life, I said. I tested whether I could survive on my own, whether I could build security from almost nothing, whether I could make a pension and a paid-off house and careful savings into a real future. And I passed that test. But yes, I also watched how you treated me, and I learned a lot. Like what? Daniel demanded. Like the fact that you'll help someone you pity but you won't respect them, I said. Like the fact that you measure people's worth by their visible wealth. Like the fact that you'd rather feel superior to me than curious about me. In 15 years, neither of you ever asked me how I was really doing. You just looked at my car and decided you knew. Daniel sat back down. He put his head in his hands. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want you to say anything, I said. I just wanted you to know the truth. I wanted to stop being your charity case, your example of what not to do, your sweet, poor mother who didn't know any better. What are you going to do with it? Bethany asked suddenly. With the money? I smiled. That's an interesting question. That's the first question you've asked about my actual plans rather than your assumptions. Well, she pressed. I'm going to live on it, I said. I'm going to travel. I've always wanted to see Japan and Italy and New Zealand. I'm going to upgrade some things in my house. Nothing crazy, but maybe a new roof, new windows. I'm going to keep donating to causes I care about. The library, literacy programs, scholarships for first-generation college students. I paused, looked at Jackson and Emma. And I'm going to set up education trusts for my grandchildren, I said. $50,000 each, to be used for college or trade school or starting a business, whatever they choose. The trusts are already established. They'll mature when the kids turn 18. Jackson's eyes went wide. $50,000 for me? And your sister, I said. But there's a condition. What condition? Daniel asked warily. That you don't tell them they're getting it until they're 16, I said. I want them to work hard in school because they want to learn, not because they know there's money waiting. And I want them to understand that wealth isn't just about money. It's about making choices, about living intentionally, about not judging people by their car or their clothes or what you think their bank account looks like. That's very generous, Bethany said stiffly. It's not generosity, I said. It's investment in the people I love and the lessons I want them to learn. We finished dinner in near silence. The kids asked for pie and I served it. Daniel and Bethany barely touched theirs. When it was time to go, everyone moved mechanically, putting on coats, collecting bags. At the door, Daniel turned to me. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it. For making you feel small, for the assumptions, for," his voice cracked, "for not seeing you." I hugged him. He was still my boy. He was still the baby I'd rocked through colic, the toddler I'd taught to read, the teenager I'd stayed up with during heartbreaks. Money hadn't changed that. Assumptions hadn't changed that. "I love you," I said. "That never changed, not once. But I needed you to see me clearly, not as a victim, not as a cautionary tale, as a woman who made choices that worked for her life." He nodded against my shoulder. Bethany was harder. She stood by the car, arms crossed, face unreadable. "I don't know if I can forgive this," she said when I walked over. "The deception, letting us look stupid." "I never made you look stupid," I said. "I just didn't correct your assumptions. And Bethany, I gave you $15,000 when your father died. I paid for your wedding. I've babysat your children hundreds of times for free. I've never asked you for anything except respect. And you couldn't give me that. Because you assumed," I interrupted, "and you never questioned your assumptions. That's not on me, that's on you." She got in the car without another word. Daniel buckled the kids into their car seats. They drove away. I went back inside. I looked at my small dining room with its half-eaten pot roast and its dirty dishes. I looked at my small house with its second-hand furniture and its paid-off mortgage. I looked at my life, and I felt free. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks since I told them the truth. 3 weeks since everything changed. Daniel has called me twice. The conversations were awkward. He doesn't know how to talk to me now that I'm not poor. Now that I'm not someone who needs his concern or his condescension. We're figuring it out. Bethany hasn't called at all. I heard from Daniel that she's upset, that she feels betrayed, that she's told her friends I played a cruel trick on them. I don't know if we'll ever be close. Maybe we never were. But Jackson and Emma, they're different. I took them to the movies yesterday, just the three of us. On the way, Jackson said, "Grandma, are you rich now?" "I'm comfortable," I said. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" Emma asked. "Rich is having money," I said. "Comfortable is having enough. I have enough for everything I need and most of what I want. That's all anyone really needs." "But you still drive the old car," Jackson pointed out. "I do," I said, "because it runs fine. Because there's nothing wrong with it. Because buying a new car wouldn't make me happier. Do you understand?" He thought about it. "I think so," he said. "It's like when Mom wanted to buy me those expensive sneakers and I said no, because the regular ones were fine." "Exactly like that," I said. We got to the theater. I bought popcorn and candy without checking the prices. That was new, that was nice. And when Jackson asked if we could go to the arcade after, I said yes, because I can. Because I spent 18 years making careful choices so that I could say yes when it mattered. Let me tell you what I've learned from all this. What 18 years of strategic poverty and secret wealth taught me. I learned that people will always make assumptions. They'll look at your clothes, your car, your house, and they'll write a whole story about who you are. And most of the time, you can't stop them. You can only decide whether their story matters more than your own. I learned that visible wealth and actual wealth are different things. The people who look richest are often drowning in debt. The people who look poorest might have more than you think. You can't know someone's financial situation by looking at them. You can only know what they choose to show you. I learned that sacrifice looks different for everyone. I sacrificed new cars and salon haircuts and brand-name clothes. I sacrificed what other people thought of me. I sacrificed being seen as successful. But I gained security. I gained freedom. I gained the knowledge that I could take care of myself no matter what. I learned that the people who love you when they think you're poor truly love you, not pity you. Those are your people. And the people who only value you for what you can give them will reveal themselves eventually. Money is a truth serum that way. I learned that you can be generous even when people think you're broke, that you can give from a place of abundance even when you're wearing Goodwill sweaters, that the size of the gift matters less than the heart behind it. And I learned that it's never too late to change your story. I was 53 when I started saving in earnest. 53 and broke and scared. And I still built something real, I still created security. If I can do it, maybe you can too. But here's the thing I want you to really hear. I don't regret the 18 years of living small. I don't regret the thrift stores or the home haircuts or the ancient Honda Civic, because those things bought me something more valuable than comfort. They bought me proof that I could do hard things. They bought me the knowledge that I was stronger and smarter than anyone thought. They bought me my freedom. And when Daniel and Bethany were mocking my pension, when they were teaching their children that grandma was a cautionary tale, I had a secret. I had the knowledge that I'd won, that I'd built a life on my terms, that their pity couldn't touch me because I knew the truth. That's power, real power, not the power of having money, though that helps, but the power of knowing your worth regardless of what anyone else thinks. So if you're out there living in a small house, driving an old car, cutting your own hair, and people are judging you for it, maybe you're broke and struggling and doing your best. And if so, I see you. I've been you. Keep going, it gets better. Or maybe you're like I was. Maybe you're building something in secret. Maybe you're choosing to live small so you can have something big later. Maybe you're letting people assume things about you because their assumptions don't matter as much as your plan. If that's you, I see you too. And I'm telling you, it's worth it. The judgment, the condescension, the pity, it's all worth it when you get to the other side and realize you did it. You built security from nothing. You proved everyone wrong. You won. My pension is $21,000 a year, and I have $700,000 saved, and a paid-off house, and Social Security, an education trust for my grandchildren, and plane tickets to Tokyo next spring. They thought I was a cautionary tale. They thought I was an example of what not to do. Turns out I'm exactly the opposite. I'm sitting here in my small house, in my Goodwill sweater, writing this on a laptop I bought used, and I'm richer than I ever imagined I'd be. Not just in money, though that helps. In peace, in knowledge, in the satisfaction of knowing I did something impossible, something people said couldn't be done. I saved almost $750,000 on a librarian's salary. I turned nothing into something. I proved that you don't need a high income to build wealth. You just need discipline and time and the willingness to let people misunderstand you. So thank you for reading this far. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've learned something from it, if it's helped you think differently about money or assumptions or the way we judge each other, then leave a comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me if you're building something in secret too. Before you close this window and move on with your day, I want you to remember this. You are not your car. You are not your clothes. You are not what people assume about you. You are the choices you make when no one is watching. You are the life you build in secret. You are stronger and smarter and more capable than anyone gives you credit for, including yourself. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to book. Tokyo is waiting, and this poor old librarian with her pathetic pension is about to see the world.